Hello and welcome. I'm Kaylani Hawks Villafranca. I'm a U.S. immigration attorney based in Austin, Texas, with clients around the world. Most of my clients are entrepreneurs and business professionals who are looking to move to the United States to expand their businesses and their careers here. This month on the channel, I'm sharing with you some of the case approvals that we've gotten in the last couple months so that you can get an idea of the work that we do here and learn a little bit more about what it takes to get a case approved. Of course, keep in mind, these are specific examples of cases that I've screened and that I represented and that I knew they were strong. Doesn't mean that your case would be approved. If you'd like to analyze your case specifically, give me a call. Got the info here below and I'd love to talk to you. All right, let's go. Okay, today we're going to talk about an approval that we received on an E-1 case. An E-1 is an import-export visa. To get an E-1, you have to show imports and exports either of goods or services between the United States and your home country. I've done plenty of other videos on the E-1. If you think that this might be applicable to you, go check them out. Today, we're just going to talk about the case we got approved. Okay, this case was for a client from Mexico. They import food products from Mexico to the United States. And their case is really typical of a lot of E-1 cases that we do and a lot of E-1 cases that are seen at the consulate every day. And because my client owned businesses or still owns businesses, my client owns businesses on both sides of the border. Client owns a business in Texas and owns a business in Mexico. The business in Mexico coordinates with the business in Texas to import products from Mexico to Texas and then sell them. They sell those products to U.S. clients. That's really, really common. So you don't have to have a U.S. company and a foreign company. For an E-1 case, you can have either a U.S. company or a foreign company be the company sponsor on your case. But people often have companies on both sides of the border that facilitates the import and the export, and that's fine as well and actually really common. And so that was the case with this client. They imported about $8 million worth of food products in the 6 months prior to our filing of the case. It's a brand new company that just started in the US, but the company in Mexico is very established. So once they opened the US company, they were able to very quickly scale up their import operations. And so we were able to show an extremely high volume of imports and exports into the United States to the tune of about $8 million. That's not necessary at all. I've got another video that you can check out about an E-1 approval with imports of around $200,000 in the prior 6 months. And you don't even need that much, really. We can get an approval with less than that, depending on the case and the pattern of transactions. But this case in particular had a very high volume. What that means is that we were able to apply for more than one visa because the company was sufficiently large to be able to support it. So we actually applied for 3 visas at the same time. And got them all approved. We got an approval for the owner of the business. For E-1 cases, you can apply for visas for owners and also for executive employees. 2 executives from the Mexican business were being transferred to the US to be able to help start the US operations. And so we applied for visas for those 2 executives as well at the same time as we applied for the owner. Well, actually, we filed them about a week after. We always want to get the owner on file first and the executives after. If we can do it that way, it's strongest. The owner went to his interview first and got approved in Monterrey. He's from Mexico. I prefer to file cases in Monterrey right now instead of Tijuana, which are the 2 places you can file them, because they tend to move a bit more swiftly than Tijuana, which is taking a little longer right now. That can change. Both consulates apply the law in the same way. But right now I've seen faster movement from Monterrey. So that's where I'm filing for my clients. So we filed for the owner of the business. He went to his interview, he received very few questions at his interview. We prepare our cases in such a way as to expect very few questions. We want to have all the questions answered for the official before the client shows up at the interview, because I can't be there with them. And the consulates don't let attorneys come, and we can't appear telephonically. We don't get to represent our clients at all during their interviews. So that means my legal work happens before my clients get to the interview. They need to be fully prepared themselves to answer questions, and I want to have presented the case in a very clear, very obvious way for the officer so they don't have any questions for my client. And so this client reported that they had a similar experience to many of my clients, which is that they get very few questions, and it's clear the officer has read the case before the client showed up. So they often will ask, who are you? Where's your business located? What are your plans for the company? what's your volume of trade? Volume of trade is how we win this case. We show an ongoing an existing pattern of trade between the United States and Mexico, or whatever country that we're focused on for the particular case. For this case, it was Mexico. So the owner got a few questions about his business to confirm he is who he says he is. He understands his business and he's really the one running it. And he got a case approval, which means he now has an E-1 visa for 4 years. And he can come into the United States, run his import-export business here or from Mexico. The E-1's very flexible. So he has the ability to be inside the US or outside the US as much as he needs to be in the 4-year period that he has his visa. About a week later, both of the executives were asked to come in to interview at the same time. They interviewed them together. Sometimes they'll interview people together. Sometimes they'll interview separate. We had submitted the cases at the same time, 2 separate case packets, of course, because they're individual cases and the individuals are different and have different histories. But we submitted them on the same day at the same time. And they were scheduled for interview on the same day at the same time, and they were interviewed together. Importantly for executives, you need to be really clear on what your job is. Unlike an owner, where you can kind of do whatever you want because you own the company, an executive's role is clearly defined. And so if you go to an interview as an executive, you need to know what your job is, and you need to actually be planning to do that job. And this is not a case where you can just be creative and say whatever you want. It needs to be true, of course, which is true of all of immigration. But for an owner, you have more flexibility to say, it's open-ended what I'm going to do with my company. I have some plans, but I'm going to see how it grows. For an executive, you need to know what your job is and know what your role is and be able to explain that well to the consulate. My clients were able to do that, of course, because we had prepared them well, and they both got approvals. So we got approvals within the span of a week for 3 E-1 visas for one company doing imports of food products from Mexico to the United States. The case took about 8 weeks total to get approved from the time we filed to the time that my clients had their visas. It was about 8 weeks. And that's pretty typical of what we're seeing right now in Monterrey. It's actually a little longer than we had been seeing recently. We'd had some clients scheduled within a month or 5 weeks, so this is a little extended. And these approvals were we're in either late January or February, early February of 2022. So if you're watching this later, you kind of know what we're talking about as far as timelines. And timelines change all the time though, so don't rely on that, regardless of when you file your case. I hope that this has been helpful to you to get an idea of what is an E-1 case, what does it look like, and how do we win it. If you'd love more information about your case, if you want to analyze the options for you, give me a call. I'd love to talk. See you soon. Bye.